guys, welcome back to another edition of Chats from the Blog Cabin. Today I'm joined by someone who actually, if you had told me a couple of years ago that I would actually be doing a chat from the Blog Cabin about public speaking, I would have told you were crazy because that was my worst fear whatsoever. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Of course, Mel. It's such a pleasure to be here. So my name's Brenden. I'm the founder of Mastertalk, which is a YouTube channel I started to help the world master the art of communication and public speaking. How I got started, really quickly, I guess, was when I was in university. I used to do these things called case competitions. Think of it like professional sports, but for nerds. So other guys my age were playing basketball or baseball or some other sport I didn't understand. I applied that same competitive spirit, but to presentations. So for 3 years, presented a bunch of times, coached a bunch of people, and then I had the idea to make a YouTube channel on the topic because I realized a lot of the information out there was really bad, and I never looked back ever since.
So honestly, you said you were into sports, so you decided to get into public speaking. Were you ever scared? Were you always the type of person that could talk off the top of your head?
Oh God, no. So I'm based in a city called Montreal, Melissa, and let's just say in Montreal, French is a required language. You need to know how to speak it. So when I grew up as a kid, early on, my parents looked at me and they said, "Buddy, you need to learn how to speak French. So we're going to put you in a French education system," which of course I'm very grateful for today. I speak more than one language, but at the time, wasn't so fun. Right? Imagine already being uncomfortable with presentations, but also presenting in a language you don't know. Not the funnest thing in the world, let me tell you. So it was definitely a challenge growing up, but I think the message that I want to share with everyone is if I could do it, why can't you?
Yeah. So how did you overcome it?
Yeah, the way that I overcame it and overall is this idea that if the message we have to share with the world, if our desire to master public speaking is more important than the fear, because the fear will always be there. But if the desire you have is much higher, if what you want is more important, you will end up achieving the result that you want. So at the beginning, it was I really wanted to win competitions. I was a very competitive person. I wasn't really good at speaking. My first couple of competitions, I still had my oversized suit from prom and a tie that, let's just say, didn't stop on my belt. I really didn't know what I was doing. I was very lost, but I really wanted to win. And then over time, it turned into what it is today with Mastertalk, where now my why in life, the reason why I believe my message matters, is because no one's sharing this information for free, and I think that's crazy. Right? So it's about developing that belief system and saying, no, we're going to be scared of public speaking, but as long as the message is more important, the same way you probably overcame a lot of mental blocks to start this show, that we can overcome it and get through the pain and really make an impact in the world.
It's so funny that you were talking about a competition because actually that's how it started. I was working with a mindset coach and she had a competition and she was like, okay, you get 10 points if you go on live and talk about one of your values. And so that's how it actually started. Is I brought a friend on with me and I said, you know what? It's easier if you're talking with someone and instead of talking by yourself. So I had a friend come on and we chatted about friendship and the bug hit and I was like, okay, from then on, it's on. But if you'd asked me a year ago, I would not have been doing chats from the Blog Cabin.
Oh, that's such a good point, Melissa. It's this idea of how do we create a system in which we're comfortable speaking? So for you, it was having a friend. For me too, by the way, when I record my videos for YouTube, that's my cheat code. I never record them alone. There's a guy behind the camera that I get dinner with after we film. He's my best friend. So I'm always presenting to him. So if there's an audience, if you can create a scenario that allows you to take action, go for it. I love that example you gave. I think it's great.
Yeah. So tell us about some of the tips that you can that we can use, because you said you give them away for free. So let's chat about that.
Of course, yeah. Everything's free. So the idea is, let me give you the easiest trick in the book. If you apply this method for any presentation for the rest of your life, it will make your presentations 10 times better. And the strategy is called the puzzle method. Public speaking, Melissa, is like a jigsaw puzzle. You know those pieces you kind of put together as kids? Probably now because
Mhm.
of COVID, everyone's doing puzzles. So
Mhm.
if I asked you, Melissa, kind of as a quick question, which pieces would you start with first if you were working on a puzzle?
I always start on the outer edges
I love that. And what would be the rationale behind that?
because then that way you at least have the framework and then you can fill in other places.
Exactly. Perfect. So now the question to ask ourselves is why don't we do that in public speaking? We have a presentation at work, at school, in the boardroom, in the classroom. So what do? We start with the middle first. We
Mhm.
shove a bunch of content, shove, 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 shove. We get to the presentation, we ramble through the entire thing. We get to the last slide, and it sounds something like this. Uh, yeah, so thanks. That's probably 95% of all the presentations I've heard.
Mhm.
But there's an easy way to fix this. Start with the edges first. Treat your presentations like a jigsaw puzzle. Practice your introduction 20 times.
Mhm.
Not one time, not 3 times. Do it 25 times. Do it 20 times. It's actually not that hard. It'll take you 30 minutes. Each introduction's a minute. It's not that long. Same thing with the conclusion. What's a great movie with a terrible ending? Last time I checked, terrible movie.
Agree.
Same thing. 20 to 25 times the conclusion. I actually recommend my clients do it 50 times, but sure, whatever you're comfortable with, just do it more than once. And then you look at your presentation after an hour or so and you go, wow, my presentation is actually not so bad. My introduction's pretty good. I've never done it 25 times. So now it's good. So now you have this confidence that you didn't have before. And then you say, now I can tackle the middle. Now I'm comfortable figuring out what the content is. The last point to that framework is understanding the following. I don't know about you, but if I got a 3,000 piece puzzle, I ain't going to do it alone.
Mhm.
That's long, especially finding all the corner pieces. So work together as a team. You don't need a coach for this. Get a group of friends. Get a community. Join a Toastmasters club. Get some people who help you with your keynote, who help you and criticize your content so that you can keep working on and get better. Even to this day, as a professional speaker, my friends from university still give me advice on my keynotes. So build that community around you, and you'll master public speaking pretty quickly.
So I love how you said get a community to help you, but you have to be open for criticism as well, right?
Absolutely.
Because I know a lot of people are like, I'm not going to change it. They don't like it, but I'm not going to change it. So you have to be open.
100%. You know what I always say is what the best speakers in the world do. Actually, let me rephrase that. The great speakers do is they talk to their audience, but the best speakers in the world do is they have dinner with them. They
Mhm.
understand their psychology of who they are, who they aspire to be. What do they dream about? What are they trying to achieve in their lives? They have deep, meaningful conversations with them off stage. So when they go on stage, it feels like a dinner conversation when you talk to them. So notice how when I started, and I started guesting on shows, I was horrible. I would talk about complex lingo. You want the 7 steps, Melissa, on how to structure a speech. Let me go
Mhm.
into all this. It's just so complicated. And then one day, a 6-year-old came up to me that was in a crowd I was speaking to, and just asked me the best question I ever got asked, which is, "What's a CEO? What's a this? What's a that? I don't get it." And I just went, right. I got to simplify my stuff. So now with puzzle, which is a lot easier version of what I used to teach people, now anyone who is new to public speaking can go, I never thought of it that way. Those are the light bulbs that you only get when you have deep, meaningful conversations to see if your ideas are landing in the way your audience wants them to land for them.
I love that. So what's another tip besides the puzzle method?
Oh yeah, I got a bunch more. But the point that I want to drive, because I share everything for free, is I want people to take action on this stuff.
Mhm.
Just puzzle. Okay, I've coached people from like 6 to 60, right? 90%, 95% of everyone I've coached doesn't apply this strategy. So if you just do puzzle, you'll already see immediate results in your communication skills. So let's move on to the next thing. I would say another tip that can really help people is to have a clear understanding of why communication matters in your life. Because I think what a lot of people miss, Melissa, is that public speaking is not just about presentations. It's about every interaction you have in your life.
Mhm.
the great conversations you have with your friends, the tough conversations you have with your family, the way that you talk to the mailman, to the person that delivers pizza for you. Every interaction you have is communication. And the more you realize that, the more you start to understand that communication improves not just the quality of your presentations, but the quality of your life. Once you get into that mind space, life becomes a lot better too. So the question I always ask people to think about is the following: how would the world change if you were an exceptional communicator? If you
Mhm.
were one of the best speakers on the planet, if every time you walked in a room, even if that room is a dining table at your house, how would the world change? How would your relationships improve? And if you can really hone in on why communication matters to you personally, that's when you'll start to watch the videos. That's when you'll join the Toastmasters Club, and that's when you'll start to take action.
I know a lot of people are scared. They're afraid that people are not going to want to hear what they have to say. So basically, you just have to get out of your own head and just jump in.
Absolutely. And I would say, as an added to that, because it's a great point, taking action, is have the conversations with the people who you actually want to serve. I thought Mastertalk was the stupidest idea. I was making YouTube videos in my mother's basement on communication and public speaking. People watch Netflix, they don't watch communication tips on YouTube. Who's going to listen to me? So why did I keep going?
Yeah.
I kept going because at the time, the 7 people who were subscribed to my YouTube channel, I knew who they were.
Mm.
They were my friends from university who were literally watching me every single week. I didn't know why they were watching. I was like, my audio sucks. Everything sucks. I had no budget. But they kept watching. I asked them why. I was having dinner with them. Teach what you preach.
Mhm.
So, I was like, why do you listen to me? They said, Brent, your video quality does suck. It doesn't suck anymore, but at the beginning it did.
Yeah.
But your tips don't suck. Your content's really good. Like, no, I've never seen anything like this. And I just went, well, if these 7 people think that, there's probably a couple more people, and the rest was history, right? There's a lot more than 7 people who are listening to my stuff these days. But that's the point I want to drive, is for you to stay motivated, intrinsic motivation isn't enough. Other people need to tell you why your ideas matter. Right, so think about your content, Melissa. I'm sure at the beginning, as you alluded to very well, you said, I don't want to create, I'm nervous. But I guarantee, I would bet like, $10 that that there's somebody every week who messages you who maybe is a mom. I don't want to generalize. It could be a different market. Women between the ages of your demographic could go up to you and say, Melissa, after I had kids, after I started getting a mortgage, I thought it was over for me. I didn't think that I could build a business until you showed me the way. It was you. I mean, if you could have conversation from a log cabin and build a business and have kids and balance all these things, I can too. So thank you for doing what you do. It's when you hear those people tell you that you go, okay, I don't care if 7 people are listening to this. I need to keep doing this. And there's probably more than 7 today, but that's the point I'm driving.
Yeah, honestly, it hits home. I actually did, for my 25th episode, I'm a mom of 3 girls. They're young adults. They're ages 25 through 18.
Awesome.
And I interviewed them, and somebody asked a question about what did they learn from their dad and what did they learn from me. And the biggest thing they said they learned from me, which totally shocked me, was perseverance, how to build something from nothing. And it just was a big eye opener for me that they were watching me. And there's been several friends that say, you found your groove. This is your calling. You're doing what you're supposed to do. And if you, like I said, if you told me a year ago, I would have said, no way, it's not happening. See, so.
And same thing with me, by the way. I'm the speech coach. I should be telling you that I have all my ducks in the right order. Not true at all. I was one of the youngest people in my industry when I entered it. If anyone had insecurity, definitely me. I was coaching people who were in their 40s on how to speak. I had a lot of doubt, but I think what helped me overcome it was realizing who I was doing it for. And for me, it was, for you, it's the mother who is struggling to leave that identity and to say, I can be more than just a mother. And for me, it's, The 16-year-old girl in high school who's getting her life started, who wants to master communication, but can't afford a speech coach.
Mm.
Doesn't have the resources to spend money on somebody like me. I couldn't afford me 5 years ago. And the only resources she has is a bunch of old white dudes in their 70s on YouTube. So I have to create the videos for her because nobody else will. So once you're very clear on who you're serving, that insecurity, that doubt, that fear will still be there, but it won't be as strong as it used to be. That's for sure.
So how are you able to support yourself through speech coaching?
I'm very close. I'm very close. I'm like 70% there. I've almost replaced my full time income, but for now it's a side hustle. So I'll probably go full time next year, something like that.
So where do you find clients at besides your YouTube video? Do they find you through YouTube, or is it referrals, or what?
You got it. It's a mix of, I would say, two different things. One is definitely podcasts, YouTube channels, definitely one part. But I'd say most of my clients come from joint ventures. So I have a business coach and a leadership coach that I work with, and he just woke up one day and he was like, "Well, all the speech coaches I hired before weren't really good, so why don't you just come and coach my executives?" That's how I built my practice from there. So I would say most of it's word of mouth for sure.
So you said you started with 7 subscribers. How many subscribers do you have now?
Oh, I think I lost count. Something like I don't like to keep track of that number. It's not good for you, but I think it's
Mhm.
5,000 something,
Okay, so
something like
you
that.
obviously built it. And how long ago did you start this business? Did you start your YouTube channel?
I'm going up on 2 years now, so in 3 weeks I'll be at 2 years. I started 2 years ago.
See, going from 7 to 5,000 in 2 years. I don't think that's not too shabby. I mean, that's pretty good.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
So what was your, like you said, you started it so that people could have that free resource, but why did you decide to go the free way and not the paid way?
Yeah, so the approach that I took to this, Melissa, was I never really wanted to make it a business. Like my day job is pretty good. Like I work as in the corporate world and I do very well for myself. So for me, Mastertalk was never meant to be a business. It was just, hey, I'm noticing a lot of these teenagers that I do pro bono work for, at like schools or nonprofits or leadership programs, and they don't have access to the right tools. Might as well just create something in my free time. I'm already making good
Mhm.
money. So for me, it was always about being generous up front, right? Just adding value. But because I did that, the unintended consequence was I started getting a lot of business. Some people started messaging me, like, especially when I went professional and I started making a lot more high quality videos. They would ask me things like, "Hey, do you do coaching?" And I said, yeah." They're like, "How much do you charge?" And I just went, "I'm supposed to charge for this?" that's that's kind of how I built a business out of it. But that's the advice I give people: is always be willing to give away everything for free, because it's by doing that that people trust you, and
Mm.
it's by doing that that people go, I'm comfortable paying this person. And I've signed very high ticket packages from just the YouTube channel. And so I think the key is, like, if you're the most and that's how our sport works,
Mhm.
and that's what's beautiful about it. The more generous you are, the more people that come to you for work. That's why I share all my tips for free. I don't hide anything. I'm pretty open book. Because even if you can't afford me, I don't really care. Watch my free YouTube videos. Go share your ideas with the world anyways. That's my hope for the world.
So obviously with the COVID, the pandemic, were a lot of Zoom calls, a lot of in person, meetings that are not in person but on the computer. How do we get to where we're comfortable speaking to a computer?
Absolutely. So yeah, online presentations are definitely challenging, Melissa. I would say the biggest difference is that the energy that you bring in an in-person room is very different than online because there's nobody in the room,
Hmm.
right? So the only strategy that really matters is the following. Understand why online presentations are more challenging. It's harder for you to draw on that energy. So there's a couple of things that you can do to make that a better experience. One easy thing you could do is always keep your eyes on the lens. So notice I'm always looking at the camera lens when
Hmm.
I'm speaking, so it gives the illusion that I'm looking at everyone directly. So one easy trick you can do to keep looking at the lens is take a picture of somebody that you love or a
Mm.
favorite food, put it next to the lens. So that way you're always looking at it. So that solves an easy problem. The second thing is have other people give you feedback on how you're doing in a presentation, and ideally, if you know them, the better. So one thing I used to do when I used to do live streams is I would plug people I knew in the stream who would support me and just go, "Hey, Brenden, keep it up." So it really felt like I was talking to somebody that I knew
Mhm.
the person there. So I would present with the same amount of energy. Now I've practiced this over time, so I can show up that energy even if we're on a screen
Mhm.
right now. But that's what I recommend people is find a way to hack it. Same thing with my YouTube videos. I never do them alone. I do them with a friend. So there's always a way to work around it. But I would say in this situation where you're alone and you're doing an online presentation, get some folks who you do know personally, put them in the room and have them support you, and then you can show up with energy because you know they're there.
I love that. But honestly, I want to put a little disclaimer right there for the food. Don't put the food up if you're hungry because that's all
Ah!
you're gonna be focusing on, right?
No one's giving me that tip. That's really good. I like that add-on. Absolutely agreed.
Because honestly, if you're hungry and you're looking at the food, you're going to be more concentrated on what you're going to be eating and, oh, when is this thing going to be over so I can eat, right?
That's a great point. Never thought of it that way.
So, what about your backgrounds like when you're on a call? You know, obviously, you don't want a lot of clutter in the background, but let's talk about that.
Yeah, for me, I don't worry too much about the background, the sense that as long as people can see you and it's well lit and there's nothing offensive in the background, you're good. And of course, if you're in a situation where you just have a horrendous, like it's just not working out for you in your house and the setup just isn't good, like right now, this is just a wall in my house,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it just looks professional in that way. But for those of you who just don't have that wall, just get virtual backgrounds, especially if you're on a Zoom call. You can just download those templates. It takes a couple of seconds, a couple of minutes to set up. It's not that hard.
Yeah. So, let's talk about the dress, obviously, because I know with the Zoom call, like you basically from here up, basically is what you're worried about. But when you're actually presenting in person, hopefully after COVID or soon we'll be able to present in person. How do you suggest you dress?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about now and then after. So now is simple. Always actually it's the same advice for both situations. It's just in person you probably want to dress in full rather than half. Is the following. Just match the dress code of the venue. So one thing I always do is I always get on a call with one of the organizers or somebody who's there, especially if I'm speaking, to just figure out what kind of conference is this. If they go to a real estate conference, I'll probably go business professional. Put a tie on, look really clean, put a nice suit on. But if it's a podcast appearance, I already know it's very casual. Like I don't need to put the same suits I do for my YouTube videos. I don't need to be super flashy. I just need to show up and add value. So it's always different. The context is going to change. So you always want to just talk to somebody who knows and just replicate it. Very simple. And another pro tip I can give you, and this is something I implement as well. I just ask the person who's the best well dressed in my network to just help me.
Mhm.
Like the suits that I have in my YouTube channel, somebody else actually picked them for me. And you don't need to spend money on this. Just ask a friend. I'm sure they would give you advice on how to dress as long as they're well dressed themselves, and you'll be fine.
Okay, so now how do you pump yourself up to go speak? Because I think a lot of people they get into their own heads, and so they let that anxiety control them. So it kind of ruins and rules their presentation. So how do you pump yourself up so you're out of your own head before presentation?
Absolutely. Everyone's got their thing. For me, what pumps me up is transformation. Like I think what really changes my life and what really gets me excited rather is the under because I've done a lot of shows, right? So I know
Mhm.
at the end of the show the host is gonna go, wow, like I never heard of public speaking in that way. Like the puzzle method, these are like super simple, super actionable. So because I hear that all the time, before I get into a conversation, I just remind myself of all of the good feedback I get, and that really pumps me up. Like, wow, imagine all the moms here who are scared of public speaking. You don't want to get on camera, and you've probably been trying months to convince them. You're like, guys, it's not that hard. Just get them. And it took me to be here to convince them. So I live for those moments, and I want everyone else to live for those moments. I don't think there's a glass of water or a breathing exercise that can save you in public speaking or a power posing exercise. I think it's more about just thinking about the transformation that you could provide people, that one tip, that one change. That's what really gets me excited. And that's why I'm such a big advocate, by the way, of having dinner with your guests, having dinner with the people that you want to serve, even if those dinners are virtual now. Getting to know them and seeing their eyes light up, that's a moment that they'll never change. And I think that's why people like Tony Robbins and Gary Vee and all these other people still do presentations, still run seminars, and transform average people one on one, because Tony just lives for those moments, and he'll do that until he dies.
Wow. Now, since we're chatting, I have to ask you, since you give feedback about, people with public speaking, feedback for me?
I think you're an excellent communicator, if I'm being honest, Melissa. But I think one thing I can comment on is why you're good. The
Okay.
reason you're good is because you do this a lot. When you're in episode 1 and you're talking to a stranger you've never met on a Zoom call, it probably sounded something like this. Hey guys, this is Melissa. I'm here with Brenden, and so it's very awkward. You're like, I don't know this guy, and I have to talk to him as if I do. But then when you're at episode 25, because you're always doing the same thing over and over again, you start to realize that 95% of all the guests you have on the show are actually really nice people.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're very easygoing. At least I hope I'm giving that impression. They're very kind. Right, thank you. So it's like you almost know them, almost in a bizarre way. So you're a lot more comfortable, and it shows through the way that you speak. So I think the only feedback I can give you is to start visualizing who you want to be in episode 100. Start looking at the people you admire in this space that have podcasts that you're a raving fan of, and start to really dissect their communication style. So for me, a couple examples of those people is people like Lewis Howes, people like Seth Godin, people like Gary Vaynerchuk, for me anyways, and people like Scott Harrison, who's the CEO of Charity Water. Those are the people I model my communication style off of. So for you, it might be completely different. It might be Brene Brown. It might be Susan Cain. It might be a mompreneur that you really admire. And by looking at the way they speak, because Brene is a very fierce speaker, maybe that's a style you want to go into, and you start to just take a little bit from them, and then over time you'll build your own identity.
I love that. And actually, I'm almost up to the 100th episode. So
oh, damn, that's amazing. Because I remember you said 25 at some point, so it's great that you had 100. That's amazing.
Yeah. I have one scheduled, and I think I just did it right before we came on, and I scheduled it, and I think it's at 84 right now. So
that's awesome.
There's been a lot of people coming through. Now, let's talk about the technical part. Like if you're doing Zoom calls or anything like that, the feedback. Because I know sometimes the people may have their mics on way too, or their sound on way too high, and you get a feedback. How can we work with that? How can we kind of like communicate so we're not really communicating that, hey, you know what, in the middle of the podcast or in the middle of the show, hey, I really need you to turn your speaker down. How can we adjust that?
Yeah, generally speaking, let's go with the easy stuff first. Try and figure that out before it starts. So one thing I always like to do is do sound checks 5-10 minutes before, just to make sure it's good so I can adjust along the way. One other thing that you can do is, there's 2 other ways you can do this. One is you can message in the chat and see if they see it. And if they don't see it, which is likely, unfortunately, at some point, what you can do at the end of a question, like let them answer the question. At the end of that question, you could say, oh, let's just pause it really quickly. And remember, this part won't be in the show. I'll edit it out. Could you just change your mic really quickly? Just ask it with very low vocal tones. Be very respectful. I mean, I've had that happen to me a couple of times at the beginning. And I just went, yeah, sure, I'll just change the volume of the amps right there. So that's not a big deal. As long as you don't make it one. That's all.
Yeah. See, that's because I think that's the biggest thing I get sometimes is there's a lot, especially if there's like 6 people on the call, there's a lot of feedback because I always say, hey, can you guys mute your mic before, and if you start talking, then you can unmute yourself. So.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, exactly. It's super easy. And by the way, for those who forget, which is totally normal also, some people are just not on the computer. What's great about being a host is you just mute them yourself.
Yeah, that's true. So is there any more tips that you want to share with us?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of tips out there, but I would say the big thing at the end of the day for those who are really getting started is to really have those dinner conversations. Talk to the people you want to serve, because it's through those people that will incentivize you to practice public speaking. If I never did case competitions, I would not be the speaker I am today, period. Because we had a huge accountability group. and I was supposed to be the best speaker in the class, because if I wasn't, the other people wouldn't try and make themselves better. So I
Mm.
always had that constant pressure in a good way to be better and better every day, and that's what led to the experience that I have today. So that's what I want for everyone, but figure out what on a scale that works for you. So if you have a vision for the world, team up with people who are aligned with that, who say, hey, let's hold each other accountable today. How about we give a presentation every week, or you do a podcast, I'll listen to it and give you feedback. And you don't need to be an expert on this, you just need to be consistent with it. And that's what you've demonstrated through your show, Melissa. When you're episode 1, sure, you might not be the best communicator, but when you're at episode 86, you know what you're talking about. You're a lot more, you flow much better. You know what questions to ask. You know how to facilitate conversation. And Melissa and myself are not the exceptions to the rule. We're the norm. Everyone can do this. You just need to have a strong reason why to do it.
And it comes through practice as well, right?
Absolutely.
So, how would people go about wanting to hire you if they want to work with you for their public speaking?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, the best way of getting in touch is definitely the YouTube channel. All you got to do is go on YouTube and type Mastertalk in one word, and you'll find me right there. All my contact details, if you want to email me, send me an Instagram DM, all of that's there. So feel free to check out those free videos, and hope they add a lot of value to you.
So, how many videos do you have on your YouTube channel?
A lot. I'm going on 100 now.
So, let's talk about your YouTube channel. How you said at the very beginning it was like the audio was off, the video was off, everything. How did you go about making it better, and what was the cost for that? Because I know a lot of people were probably thinking they want to do a YouTube channel or a podcast or something. So what's the cost?
Absolutely. So it really depends. Everyone's got their own thing. Everyone has their own outcomes, but I'm happy to share mine. And I don't recommend my approach. Okay, just because I don't think it's going to apply for most people listening. So I'm someone who's very serious about YouTube as a platform. So I actually invest a lot of the coaching revenue I make back into the channel, even if the channel isn't actually making me money, because I want those resources to be available for people who can't afford me. It's just one of my core values. So I spend a lot of money on YouTube. So I don't think that numbers is probably going to scare off a lot of people. But what I would say at the beginning is you want to start with nothing. I literally started with this. I didn't even have these lights, right? I was just literally there in my mother's basement. I just made videos. What you really want to start honing on is the skill of presenting better. Everyone here wants to be a thought leader, a coach, provide a service. So for you, editing is not the game. You can hire somebody else to do that. It's very time consuming. I've never edited a single video since I started the channel. At the beginning, you want to learn how to present on camera. That's the focus. Make a video every week, every 2 weeks, interview people if that's what you're more comfortable with, like Melissa's doing right now. And then over time, as you get better in your posting, then you can start to take YouTube more seriously and invest more money into it. So for example, for me, the first 7 months of my YouTube channel, the audio was still through here. Really bad. But because I got really good and I started getting more budget, then I invested in a DSLR, which is like a $700 camera, and I bought a $100 mic. So I invested a bit more, and now I have a full production team. So now I spend a lot more money than that. But so yeah, I think the advice I have for people is start with what you have, just to get better with communication. Because even if you don't want to take YouTube seriously, those skills will just help you in general when you're presenting at a webinar, when you're speaking at a conference, when you're guesting on a podcast. So just do it for the sake of warming up. And then later, if a couple of months down the road, you realize that you want to take YouTube more seriously, then you want to start looking into other costs, like upgrading your camera or getting an external mic.
So what are some of the things that you suggest for people that want to start upgrading their cost? What are some of the tools they should get?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it was getting a camera. Like I just had a phone really and a tripod, and it sucked. I hated it. I was doing it for 6 months. For 6 months, I was using just that. No other gear. And I just said, oh, I should probably use lights. So I was making money from my corporate job, and I just invested a bit of money, and I said, oh, let me buy a camera. Let me buy this. So I would say the best first investment is to always make for your YouTube channels, depending on whether or not you want to film it, is definitely a good camera. You don't need to spend a lot of money on it, like 700, 800, $600. Or better, ask somebody in your friend group to just lend you one. There's
Mm.
somebody out there that you're chummy with, that your girlfriend's with, that will they'll just give you their camera, right? So that's like the first thing to do. And then the other thing after that is just to buy a good mic, like a Rode or something else. You could do internet research on this, have like a $200 budget for that, and that's it. And once again, if you know the right people, and you don't even have to spend that, you just ask the people, and you just post on Facebook, "Hey guys, I need a camera. Does anyone have one?" They'll think, "Yeah, I'll just give it to you," and there you go.
So you suggest getting a DSLR camera instead of a video camera?
Uh, Honestly, I'm not a stickler on any of this, Melissa. So for me, it's really like stick with what you have, upgrade to what you got, and then over time, ask yourself what your strategy is. So I'll give you an example with me. I hate the video making process, right? I don't want to edit videos. I barely can't keep up. Like for me, it's like I just want to add value to people and make really good content. So because of that, I outsourced everything. So my best friend does all my production. He does everything A to Z. I just write the scripts. I show up and I just speak on camera and I walk out. That's it. He sets up everything for me. But I pay him a premium for that, right? It's not cheap. So for everyone who's listening, you need to figure out what that medium is for you, what your budget is. If your budget is $1,000 a year, then your strategy is going to be very different than if your budget is $10,000 a year plus, like it is for me, right? So for $1,000, I would say just get a camera, present every week, have somebody in the audience who maybe have your sister or your sibling or somebody in your house kind of just pressing record for you and just go from there. But I think the biggest thing most people miss on YouTube is they just don't post enough. You just got to start posting every week like you're doing with the show. So like let's say something like you. I would recommend something completely different than someone who's listening. So for you, I would say you need to take YouTube more seriously. You need to start making solo episodes. You need to start making like stuff that I'm doing. You need to start to getting that level. But the reason you're qualified for that advice is because you've done the work. You've done 86 episodes. You're actually taking action here. Most people haven't even started a show yet. So for most people, I wouldn't recommend that. I would just say, hey, start a show, do something with your phone, and then work your way up to the level that you're doing this now with.
I love that. Wow, you've given me so much to think about. I mean, do you have any other strategies or tips or quick tips that you can share with us?
Yeah, I would say a quick tip for you is what you need to start thinking about is how do you become a thought leader on YouTube?
Mm.
So even if nobody's watching you, the beauty of YouTube on that platform, because when you're getting started, nobody is when you have prospective clients and you're answering their questions, what's amazing about YouTube is you can make a full video on that and you can share that forever. So if 10 prospects message you and say, hey, Melissa, how do I start a business? Hey, Melissa, how do I think about writing a blog? You already made a video on that people can find. So you just send them the video link. They don't need a YouTube account. And you can add value without wasting your time. So that's what I would say for you. That would be the big benefit of YouTube. Even if you don't want to take it seriously as a platform, you can make 10 videos. Because on a Facebook, on a LinkedIn, your videos get lost. Like nobody can go in your profile and find it. Whereas me, you just click on Mastertalk, all my videos flip. It takes you 10 seconds to flip through. I have playlists that are already pre-made. You click them, you consume, that's it, you're done. No friction. Whereas with everything else, you need a LinkedIn account, you need an Instagram account, you need a Facebook account. You don't have that issue with YouTube. You just make great stuff, share it with prospects, and you get your ROI back really quickly.
Now that brings us to another point. You talk about you have a list of YouTube videos. So how do you go about doing that?
Absolutely. So the way that I figure out content ideas, right? Like how do I figure that stuff out?
Mhm.
Absolutely. Ask your audience. They know. One thing is usually thought leaders who go on YouTube generally have coached for a while before they started making content. So it's in my case, I had 3 years of coaching experience under my belt before I started YouTube, and I don't recommend you need to wait that long. It just so happened with my life, I could have easily started YouTube 6 months into coaching or 3 months into coaching. What coaching and getting people results allows you to do is it allows you to figure out what questions they're actually asking you. Like for you, I'm sure you already have your list of, you just haven't written them down. The top 20 questions you get for your business. What is the top 20 things people ask you? Hey, Melissa, how do you start a blog? Hey, Melissa, how do you annotate something? Or how do you make how do you make money as a lifestyle entrepreneur? All that stuff. And you just make videos on each of those things and you share it with the audience and you go, can you give me more video ideas? And just to give you an idea, I take this extreme. I actually write my content 3 years in advance.
Oh, wow.
because I get so much ideas that I write everything so quick, especially during the holidays. What else do I have more to do besides guesting on shows? I just write more content. So I'm closing on 2023 now. So I don't even have to think about my content. All I have to think about now is showing up, adding value, and coaching my clients. That's it. Done.
So let's talk about, okay, people are actually going through and chatting about, oh, I have somebody's car is going off. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
I don't know whose car. It's one thing about doing in the neighborhood. You can't have all that noise, as I can't do the earphones because they just drive me crazy.
That's
But
okay.
let's talk about the content. Like you said you have content out till 2023. What happens if something comes up and it's more pertinent? Do you switch around content? Are you flexible? You have to be flexible when that comes around as well.
Absolutely. For me, it's always do more than do less. And the sense of the more that you do, the more the more videos you have in the bank. So you're not worried. Let's say you're at a party, you're at a family gathering on a Saturday evening, and you haven't posted that week. So now you're just panicking for no reason.
Mm.
You're just like, crap, I got to post tomorrow, and I forgot. I try and make life as easy as possible for anyone who wants to create content. If you create your content like me 3 years in advance, I could literally go on vacation for 6 months. YouTube's still posting videos every week for me. Even if it's not trending or up to date, the content I always try to create is stuff that's going to be relevant 10 years from now. Like the stuff like puzzle is always going to be relevant
Mhm.
forever for like the rest of human, unless people don't know what puzzles is anymore, then I have to use a different analogy. But the strategy remains the same. So that's what I recommend people do, especially thought leaders who are listening. Your content is going to live forever, and the best way to house that content is definitely YouTube.
Okay, that's another question that I have. How often do you video? Do you batch videos like
You got it.
five at a time, or?
You got it. I like just yeah. Last week I was with my video editor, recorded 8 videos in a day, and this week I'm meeting him again, recording another 13. Once again, I don't recommend this for most people. I'm very intense on the platform. I take it very seriously. So I'd say for most people out there, you want to try and record 2, 3 videos in a day,
Okay.
right? 2, 3, maybe 4. I would start with 2. Keep things simple. Because remember, if you're recording 2 videos every week and you're posting once a week, you gain a huge lead over your content.
Mhm.
Right? And then you'll get to my level where you're kind of just there like, well, I'm a year ahead of time now. Let me just go spend time with my family, my content strategy sorted out.
Which that kind of brings me to my next question. How do you set boundaries so that you're not recording every single solitary day, 4 or 5 sessions a day? How do you set boundaries?
That's the key. The key is to set up yourself in a way that makes sense. So for me, what makes sense is once a week forever. You won't see me posting twice a week. I'll burn out. It's too much content. It's too much creation because I really spend a lot of time making it perfect. So for me, it's like what I'm comfortable with because I don't have a family. I'm still single. I don't have all those commitments. It's let me just take that lead because I know I'm going to be on YouTube 10 years. And assuming YouTube's still relevant in 10 years, I'll still be on it in 10 years. So for me, it's let me just create content for the platform for the next 5, 10 years. And even if YouTube dies, I can still use that content for other stuff, whatever's going to be relevant in
Mhm.
those number of years. So that's what I recommend people do is to start thinking in that way. Is what are you comfortable with? And I generally recommend once a week is the best. That's what's comfortable. Especially if you're just doing interviews, you do 3 interviews in a day, you're done for 3 weeks. So that's what I recommend. Find a content schedule that you're comfortable with and stick to it.
I love that. So when you come to scheduling, you kind of have to make sure that you stand by your goals, you stand by what you want to do instead of when everybody else is available as well, right?
Absolutely.
So let's talk about scheduling on YouTube. How do you do that? Because I know a lot of people are like, "What schedule? I'm scared. I don't know what to do," you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I would say is the best piece of advice I have for scheduling is don't worry about it. I think for me the big thing is just getting started. Just post a couple of videos. And then over time, what will happen is you'll start to get into that flavor. Like when you started the show, you weren't really sure what the schedule was, you kind of just figured it out. And then after episode 7, you're like, okay, let me actually do this once a week. Or maybe let me do it twice a week. And then you start to find that flow. But I'd say for most part, most people listening, it's momentum. Just start doing it. You know, for me, my first video, it took me a month just to post it. I was so scared to post it. Then after that, now I'm not scared anymore. So that's what I want for people.
Oh, I love that. So, is there any last tips before we kind of say goodbye?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the big thing I would love to leave people with, Melissa, is this idea that the reason I started what I did is because I think everyone has a great idea worth sharing. It doesn't need to be a YouTube channel, it doesn't need to be a podcast. It just needs to be a conversation you always wanted to have with somebody, something you want to share it with them. So I encourage all of you, especially those who have stayed until the end, to take the advice that we're showing you right now and take action on it. Like there's so many amazing people out there who want to hear your ideas in the same way Melissa had her insecurities, I had mine, but now we're grateful. We don't regret the decision because there's hundreds of people who rely on us now in our content, and there's so much fulfillment that comes from us. But we don't have to be the exception. We're the norm. That's the conversation today that I really want to drive. Is I want you all to be those people too, down the line, and let me know during the journey how it's going, and I'll be the first to celebrate with you.
I love that. So, where can people find you again?
Absolutely. So the best way to find me is Mastertalk. So YouTube, just go on YouTube and type Mastertalk in one word, and all of the content, all of the questions you might have will probably be answered on the channel there.
And then if they can't find the answer that they want to actually talk to you, then they just email you or just message you through YouTube?
Yeah, absolutely. So all my contact information, my email, my Instagram handle, all the ways of getting in touch is all on the YouTube channel. So feel free to just check that out and send me an email if you need anything. Happy to engage.
Okay. And I want to thank you for joining us on Chats from the Block Cabin.
Of course, Mel. Thanks for having me.
All right. We will see you on the next chat from the Block Cabin. Bye, guys.